welcome to this week's episode of Staying Sane. I'm Jay, and my partner in crime, Hussein.
Oh, Sane, yeah.
So,
How are you
thank you
doing?
for. Oh, I'm doing very good. How are you?
Okay, I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Happy
Okay.
to. Yeah.
Happy to. All right. So we have a good debate topic coming up for people at the end of the news roundup. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a battle between Canada, the true North, strong and free, against the Indian
Okay.
government and the Sikh separatists. All right. So let me jump into the news. Hussein has one issue for this week that we'll talk about in India, but I have most of the news coverage this week. So let me jump in. Right,
Mm-hmm.
so more from Israel's continuing acts of impunity this past week. An Israeli tank appears to have, as the UN described it, quote, apparently deliberately fired upon a U.S. peacekeeping tower. Lebanon has said 16 people, including the mayor, were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a municipal building in the south. Our next story last week, I reported that Joe Biden is extremely angry with Netanyahu, who called Bibi a quote, rogue actor of a rogue state. This week, Washington demanded that Israel allow more aid into Gaza or risk a reduction in military support. Both Reuters and Israel's Channel 13 News report that the Israeli PM has convened an emergency meeting to address this threat from the U.S. BBC's
Mm-hmm.
international editor Jeremy Bowen writes that the U.S. threat is a sign of its anger that Israel has not kept its promises. The letter to the Israeli government was signed by both U.S. Secretary of State and the Defense Secretary. And I will quote from some key parts of the letter. The letter states, we are now writing to underscore the U.S. government's deep concern over the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza and seek urgent and sustained actions by your government this month to reverse this trajectory. The letter then continues, we are particularly concerned that recent actions by the Israeli government, including halting commercial imports, denying or impeding nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between northern and southern Gaza in September, continuing burdensome and excessive dual use restrictions, and instituting new vetting and onerous liability and customs requirements for humanitarian staff and shipments, together with increased lawlessness and looting, are contributing to an accelerated deterioration of conditions in Gaza. The letter also calls on Israel to end the quote isolation of northern Gaza by reaffirming that there will be quote no Israeli government policy of forced evacuation of civilians end quote. Yeah, moving into the next story. So
Before that,
in the go ahead.
before that, I just wanted to ask you, like, do you think that this assassination of this terrorist Sinwar
Mhm.
um,
That was
would
my next
bring,
point.
yeah, would bring any kind of an end to this war or the future of this situation? What do you think?
Oh,
The role that
probably
he had
not.
played so far.
I mean, obviously, there's more people to take his place.
Hmm.
Hamas wasn't a one-man show, so they've taken out the leader who was apparently the mastermind. So yeah, that was actually my next point was that Sinwar was taken out this week, and he wasn't even in the attack. He just happened to be in the area where the Israeli forces were operating, and actually, it just by sheer luck, apparently got him, according to the news. Um, as we have heard, and those of you who watched our talk a few weeks ago, the debate we did between an Israeli and a Palestinian, a lot of the Palestinian public are losing their support, or the support for Hamas is evaporating, in the
Hmm.
wake of all of this destruction and chaos. So yeah, someone's going to step into his shoes, but it's far from over. Whether somebody who, whoever the leader is who emerges is more, what's the word, responsive
Hmm.
to diplomatic negotiations, we're going to have to wait and see. Like that's one of the biggest criticisms of Israel. So I'm going to get to an article in one or two stories. I have a very detailed article from an Israeli journalist who's written in the magazine Foreign Affairs.
Hmm.
One of the biggest issues is that Netanyahu hasn't brought, it's been over a year, has not brought the hostages home, has dragged out this war, has dragged out the negotiations because Netanyahu knows his ass is in the fire. He knows that the longer he drags this out, the longer he keeps his own ass out of jail. So one of the big things that has to happen is a leadership change in Israel, as well as, getting rid of Hamas. So
mm,
we're gonna, I guess, kind of have to wait and see.
mm.
And, who's going to emerge as the leader, whether there's going to be some factional infighting. I would imagine there might be some, some of the
But
contenders, like, like in the American Mafia, some of the up and comers might decide to take out a rival so that they can
mm,
be the leader. So it's kind of
but
hard to
I
say. And I'm not a Middle East policy analyst, so I couldn't tell you.
mhm. But I think this time this is getting a different kind of an approach when comparing with the past events. Like, in fact, Sinwar was in Israel's custody for more than 20 years, um, and see if they had known that okay, this would have ended like this, they could have killed him during that period itself. So I think there's a shift of the considerations or the way that they are dealing with this situation. That is to kill all the or to eliminate all the top officials of this terrorist organization, that is Hamas, when comparing it with the past response during these events. So now, why I'm saying is this: you are also seeing a decrease in the way the people are responding to Hamas and how they see Hamas and how they are um, showing that kind of a fear for this their presence in that region. So now, uh, I don't know whether you have seen that or not. More and more Palestinians from this Gazan region is coming out and they are calling out against this Hamas atrocities, and they are even openly saying that they are literally causing all this trouble and they want to stay with Israel. Even that kind of comments are being shown
For sure, sure.
in the public. This is something new. That's what I'm saying. So I think there's
Well,
a shift in the way that these things were seen when comparing it with the past events and the situations
I,
that were prevailing.
I read a stat some months ago that
Mm,
stated, so apparently Hamas was elected by the people in Gaza, but the statistics said demographically,
mm,
because the demographics of Gaza, it's a very, very young population. That's like a
yeah.
significant majority of the population of Gaza wasn't even alive, or was not of voting age when Hamas was elected. So these people have now come of age, and I think they're all fed up with what's going on. So
Mm,
I think you have a very good point. I think getting rid of the Hamas leadership is probably going to be key, because these guys, these are
yeah.
zealots. They're
I
they're
could
just
see a
as zealous
few.
as the far right Jews are. So
Yeah, even I could see a few of their comments, which is getting circulated on Twitter and some other social media platforms, where some people are even giving more visibility to these kind of voices. I could even see a young guy from Gaza. He is openly saying that I don't remember his name, but he was saying that I'm from Gaza and I must say this. This is the way that they are addressing now. So people have learned from all these things that they are seeing right now. And also, there's a narrative that is now so popular that Gaza was beautiful before October 7th. This is what they themselves say now. So they are forced to say this because if they stick to the history and they try going back and back and back, there's no point where they can stop. So at least now they are stopping at October 7th, and they themselves are saying that October 7th caused much damage to whatever things that they had built by years of hard work and other things. Like they were literally they're living a good life after 2006 or 7, after Hamas was taking power in that region and they were ruling them. So for almost 13 years, they could live peacefully or without much trouble or much damages as we are seeing today. So they could easily compare with what was there before October 7th and after October 7th. So maybe that could be a reason why they are able to say this openly. What do you think?
yeah, I mean, obviously the people in the general population of Gaza are definitely speaking out more, and expressing their discontent. That they're living through the suffering of what Hamas has brought
Mm,
upon them, and as well as what Israel has done. Israel, admittedly has been rather indiscriminate, in some of their bombings and have killed a lot of innocent people. You mentioned that Sinwar was jailed by the Israelis. So what I
Yeah.
read of Sinwar this week, he comes from a family that was displaced in the Nakba, grew up in the refugee camps. The problem is what's happened in the last year, as many Israeli journalists and secularists have pointed out, what Netanyahu's doing is not making Israel any safer. They're just creating a whole new generation of terrorists who've lost everything. Their families have been killed, their loved ones have been killed, their houses have been destroyed. There was a video that went viral of a young boy burned alive in an Israeli bombing. Um, there was, uh, I've mentioned this previously. I've discussed it with a secular Jewish friend of mine as well, who put me onto a American Jewish secular podcast that have said exactly the same thing. Hamas knew exactly what they were doing. Hamas knew that what they did a year ago would cause Israel to react in the way that it did. And what has it done to Israel? It's made Israel a pariah in the world. Yes,
But
there are many people still supporting Israel and saying, yes, they have a right to defend themselves. But the overreaction of Israel, the indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians, has turned the tide against Israel. Whereas before Israel had a lot of support, a lot of that support has now completely evaporated.
I don't think so because, whenever we mention about all this, even now we fail to address the issue of the hostages and how this the whole thing was carried out on October 7th, and whatever things that were prevailing from October 7th till October 7th from 2005 and 6. So there's a huge gap where these liberals and the seculars and other people who fail to address. So I think that's giving more upper hand to Israel, at least at least to stick on with whatever plans that they're having, and they have it now. Finally, when they eliminate this person, Sinwar, they are they are keeping a checklist of whatever things that they are about to accomplish from this war, and they are showing the world, okay, we have done this, we have done this. So in between, when okay, if I agree to you, I would be forced to agree to you if there was no attack from Hezbollah, there was no attacks from Houthis, and there was no intervention from the Iranian side, and it was just between the Hamas and Israel. Okay, then things would have been even difficult for me to cite and to show you how this is giving more chances for them to fight back. So now that's not the case. There's no reason why Houthis can attack them. There's no reason why Iran is engaging
Well,
war
that's
in
just
this.
Muslim Brotherhood. That's like this is just
That's the
extremists
that's
helping.
exactly what is happening here.
Yeah,
Yeah. So the world failed to address this but even we are forced to say this whenever we cite all these examples, the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, this exactly is the same reason or the very reason why this whole thing is happening over and over from the day one. That this is what we are saying. So
yeah.
without addressing this, without addressing the past history, which they are forcefully hiding whenever we try to say it, and it's only their liberty to take up the historical part, and they can just brag about or play the victim, and they do the things. That's not the way. If you are playing, if you are digging the history out, you should give that liberty to even to Israel as well. That's not what we are seeing here. So that's the problem. Okay, so now we have this. We have eliminated most of the top officials of this terrorist organization, and this is a chance for the world to move on. Now we should stand with the peace processes, the Abraham Accords, and how this Middle East was trying to
Okay,
be
all
in
right.
peace with Israel and all.
So let's back up a little bit. As I
Yeah.
mentioned in my very first story,
Mm.
what did Israel do in Lebanon in this past week? They attacked the UN peacekeepers. So what peace is there going to be? Like if the Israel is indiscriminately attacking UN peacekeepers, what chance is there for peace? Even
Mhm.
with Sinwar gone. This is outrageous that they would attack UN peacekeepers.
Mhm.
Absolutely outrageous. There's no other way to describe it.
Mhm. Okay, if I'm not well aware of that incident, but we have seen something else, that is the UNRWA, their workers engaging in terrorist activities. Even some of their members were actively participating in this October 7th attack. That's part of the UN. So that's one another part which is obvious and which is very clear. And even now, when this Sinwar was dead, one of his close aides who got killed in this attack was having an ID or a passport or something where he was mentioned as he was a bodyguard of this Sinwar, and he was a worker, a teacher from this UNRWA. So how come we can justify this? So if we want to get this addressed, how this attack was happening, and maybe if there is a mistake that happened from their part, and if Israel is not held accountable for that, and if they are not addressing that or acknowledging that, and if they are not taking guilt of that particular event, then there's a reason for criticizing them. But here it is not the case. Here we have even called out a news where they were even denied of a proper prosecution procedure just because they were under UN and they were having a kind of an immunity from these legal proceedings in the US court. So, how they are having this, how they are enjoying all this liberty just because they are part of this UN as part of UNRWA, and they are engaging in these terrorist activities, and they are even getting exposed, and still they are getting this immunity from legal proceedings. This is what we are, uh, what do you say, uh, purposefully hiding or purposefully avoiding from a discussion viewpoint.
Well, I don't think they should be, right? They
Yeah,
shouldn't be protected.
but
Like
this is happening. This is
if
a reality.
if yeah, well, I mean, I'm not a diplomatic legal expert. You know, you need somebody like George Clooney's wife.
Mm.
You know, this is
Yeah,
the kind of law that she
we should
gets
bring
into.
them on.
Yeah. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, but like the thing is, like the history is just so complicated. There are so many socio-political elements involved in this, and the history is so deep. This is not a
Mm.
single issue or even two or three. Like there's so this is such a complex topic.
But this
Like,
is a milestone. We can
you know,
acknowledge that
you
at
mean
least.
Sinwar, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
so now we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Like who's gonna rise to the top, or are they just gonna like
Mm.
maybe a saner mind will rise to the top of Hamas who
Obvious.
realizes that Israel is set on exterminating them, and maybe he's got enough sense to say, all right, we
Yeah, yeah.
surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In that way, Yasser Arafat could be a model here because at least though he was a fierce terrorist and so much vocal about terrorist activism and this kind of intifada and other things, later on he could change. He was pro two-state solution and he was more into peace processes and other things, and we know that. So there was a transformation that happened in him. But for Sinwar or the current leadership of this
yeah.
Hamas, we were not seeing that. But right now we
Well,
can
I've been
even,
saying for weeks. I've been saying for weeks,
yeah,
we need a change of leadership on both sides. The
obvious,
Israeli
yeah,
government
absolutely,
has got to go, and so does Hamas. So,
yes. So in
only
that way, yeah. So in that way, I see this as a great milestone, and the chances for peace to prevail in that region is increasing. That's what
it's
I would say.
increasing, but they've also created a whole lot of new terrorists over the last year too. People who've lost everything,
Let's
right?
see.
And when you
Yeah.
take, if you've got nothing left to live for,
Mm.
so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Hopefully there have been a number. I've seen a number of stories of
Mm.
Palestinians who have lost a loved one, who are begging for peace, saying, please, this isn't going to turn me into a terrorist. I lost my son, I lost my wife. Please stop
Mm.
this before more people lose. So,
Hmm.
you know. We just
Yeah.
have to hope. But Netanyahu's got to go. That's first and foremost. Netanyahu has got. I mean,
But he's
Biden,
not gonna go.
Biden is so pissed off at Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Biden calls him a rogue actor. So yeah,
Let's see.
yeah,
I don't think he'll go now anytime
yeah.
soon,
No,
unless he gets assassinated by something that we saw yesterday.
right.
Some
Okay,
attempts.
so we've talked about Sinwar, which was
Yeah.
one. Okay, so this one. So let me jump into this. So this comes from an Israeli journalist that I follow. Actually, let me just get the hyperlink here. I'd like to share this article in the chat with people.
Mm.
It's from Foreign Affairs magazine. Let me just quote a couple of significant lines that she has here. So this is a bit long, so please bear with me. This is a journalist that I've been following for quite a while. The title of the article is Israel's Hidden War, the battle between ideologues and generals that will define the country's future. Now, this is about the internal battles that are going on in Israel between the far right the far right religious extremists and the majority secularists. So let me quote here. So the article notes that Ronan Bar, the head of Israel's security service, Shin Bet, wrote a letter to Netanyahu and Israeli cabinet ministers warning that the attacks by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, he called, and I quote, Jewish terrorism, challenge Israel's national security, and a large stain on Judaism. Since the attacks a year ago, the UN has recorded over 1,400 incidents of settler attacks in the occupied territories, resulting in property damage and injury and displacement of over 1,600 Palestinians from their own land. So I'd like to quote a couple of points from the article directly. Barr warns that uh, Israel could heed the warnings of security officials such as Barr, or it will continue to be guided by the imperatives of the far right. The latter course will cause more bloodshed, ultimately hurt Israel's standing and support in the West, and lead to further international isolation and pariah status. Many Israelis who still view their country as secular, liberal, and democratic see the struggle against the extreme right as existential. Israel's top security officials are raising the alarm, asserting that the sections of Israel's political right are working directly against the country's own interests. And then he wraps up the growing clash between the far right and the security establishment is, quote, unprecedented, in the words of a former top Israeli intelligence official. There is a fundamental gulf between, on the one hand, Jewish ideologues intent on formalizing Israeli control of the occupied territories, on the other, veteran security commanders deeply involved in the day to day operations of maintaining Israel's security and communicating with their US counterparts. The security forces are part of a military establishment that has been traditionally identified with Israel's secular liberal democratic order, determined to at least keep up the appearance of abiding by the rule of law. The former have become increasingly hostile, the former being the religious far right. And then let me quote the finale. The article concludes with a dire warning about the future of Jewish religious extremists. If the far right wins out, as currently seems likely, Israel will continue to dispossess Palestinians from large swathes of the West Bank, build more settlements, pushing forward with piecemeal annexation that Smotrich has spearheaded. Together with provocations on the Temple Mount, this trajectory almost guarantees a future of increased violence and instability for both Palestinians and Israelis. Triumph for the hardliners could spell disaster for Israel, as a deepening culture of lawlessness and chaos only further weakens the beleaguered mechanisms of Israeli democracy. So, again, that is in the link that I posted in the chat if you want to read the full article. Now, I did
Yeah.
send this a few weeks ago. We had the discussion between Amir Schnabel, president of Israeli Atheists, who is the one of the AI affiliates, and the Palestinian Economist. I sent that article to Amir. Amir tells me that the far right, like while he concurs with the article, he says the far right, the religious extremists in Israel, are losing a lot of their power, especially over the last year, the disaster of the last year. So, as you said, with Hamas in Gaza and the loss of the public support, Amir is telling us that the far right religious zealots in Israel are losing a lot of support. So this could theoretically be that sea change that you were talking about, that we have a massive change in leadership in Israel that is fed up with all this far right religious bullshit that is prolonging this conflict. So
Yeah.
okay, so if you want to read the full article, the article
Yeah.
is
The
in the
link is here.
chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in more positive news, hang on, let me just scroll up here. In more positive news, the Los Angeles Catholic Archdiocese has been ordered to pay $880 million, the largest settlement so far in a child sex abuse settlement to over 1,300 people abused by priests. Staying in the US, in the deeply conservative state of Missouri, where I used to live over 20 years ago, a pro LGBTQ pastor and vocal supporter of trans rights is now running for state office. Reverend Shume stated, and I quote, I'm a Christian who believes in trans rights, and I'm going to be loud and make sure legislators hear from Christians who are not spewing hate. Good on you, Reverend Shumway, and good luck in your election. And my last story. So last week I reported on a UK assisted dying bill, which the current Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, warned was a slippery slope. This week, the MP who introduced that bill has written to Welby and requested a face to face discussion at a date to be determined. Additionally, the previous head of the Church of England, George Carey, has come out in favor of the bill, urging Anglican bishops in the House of Lords to vote for it, with Carey stating, quote, because it is necessary, compassionate, and principled. Carey notes that it is, and I quote again, ironic that I will represent the vast majority of Anglicans who favor change, and the bishops in the House of Lords will not. So that takes care of my news for this week. So if you
Yeah.
want to jump in on your story.
Uh, I think it's done. Maybe we can head on to the topic from Khalistan.
Sure. Okay. So
Yeah.
those of you who have been maybe paying attention to the news, it's over the past year, there has been a major diplomatic row between India and Canada. Now, I'm Canadian. I'm wearing my True North Strong and Free shirt. Hussein is obviously Indian, so we're going to discuss this. So it came out this week. There was another article.
Mm.
Uh, so it's about Khalistan. Am I saying that right? Khalistan.
Khalistan is,
So
yeah.
Khalistan. So this is a separatist Sikh homeland.
Mm.
Now, so I think it was June of 2023, somewhere around June of 2023, a Sikh separatist in Canada was assassinated, and the Canadian intelligence officials and American intelligence officials who have investigated this, as well as both French and British, have
Mm.
stated the Indian government is complicit in this attack. So, Hussein, you were telling me before we got started that uh, the Sikh separatists in India uh, have been employing violence in India. So maybe you can maybe just give us a brief background of the separatists and what they're doing in India.
Yeah. They they were always showing some sort of. Not all Sikhs are doing this. We should say that, but a faction of Sikhs, they are always um, pro-separatists. Like they wanted to divide this country into a separate nation for this, in the name of Khalistan, and that's what they were always trying to do. And for that, we have a history of their violence that was even taking away the life of one of our prime minister, and in the past that happened. So Sikhs and their identity and their politics and these things were always part of our political arena, where that's always a part of their history, this political discussions. So it's not easy to deal this. And even when you look at the religious practices that they are having, we even have certain rules which even gives them leniency even for wearing the helmet while riding a bike. You can even a Sikh can ride a bike without a helmet because they are already wearing a big turban, and that's one reason why they can just move on with whatever things that's already there on their heads. So the way things are made easy for them, India was always like religious freedom and how they could be uh, uh, taken into the mainstream and included in the politics and all wakes of Indian politics. And apart from that, if you look at the army, Indian army, you can see a lot of them working in the army, and a huge number of Sikhs.
The separatists are
No, no,
the
no,
Sikhs in
the
general,
the
the
Sikhs in
Sikhs.
general. Yeah. So, but these people who are these separatists among the Sikhs, they are causing trouble even to these normal Indian Sikhs, which is now becoming a problem. And now, what the problem, real problem, is when it comes to uh, the international communities, like when it comes to Canada, they are having a pretty good base over there, and they are using that, and they are trying to force the governments over there, and they are trying to come into power, and that in that way they are trying to control these movements here. So if you look at some of the policies that this current government was trying to bring about. For example, like the farmers bill, that's something that was put forward as an amendment, or as a new way of dealing with these farmers. And in fact, it was good for them, the bill for the farmers, a kind of modernization. But that was vehemently opposed, mainly by these Sikhs and the landlords and the heavily funded these people from this region, and who were literally backed by this Khalistanis. That's how the news were all reading those days. So now, finally, what happened was the government was forced to take back, or they just stopped proceeding with this bill, and now it's not yet passed from the parliament. So
So where
the,
was there a section of India designated to be a Sikh, separate Sikh homeland, or an area? Is there an area of India where the Sikhs
they
are
are
the
they are
majority?
claiming they are claiming a part of that their region. So that's how they
Okay,
do it. Yeah. So
okay.
and that's not possible in India anymore. Like we had given out a part of our nation already once. We have given that, then that's Pakistan and Bangladesh. We know that. So in the name of religion, dividing the country, and now India is a secular country, so dividing it again and again, and even we have some other separatist movements like the South India and the North India. There are some other people also calling for the divisions. So if we ever accede to these kind of uh, divisions, or these kind of calls made by these people, that will be giving a wrong signal to those people who are waiting for even more cuts to be made into this big land. So that's not the right way. So these are the people who are causing trouble even to the normal Sikhs living here peacefully, just like the part of India, they are with the heart of India. So uh, that's the real problem that they are causing. Just like we always say, the some of the Islam is causing the trouble to the normal Muslims or the peaceful Muslims.
It's always a small percentage
Yeah,
of radicals,
yeah.
it's
So
never the
they
majority.
even
So
burned the Indian flag in the overseas. We have seen such videos circulating, and that's giving a very wrong sense of Indianness uh, to the outside people and to the people who are really nationalistic. So you can imagine what would happen if the right wing, the purported right wing, who are truly nationalist and they are much into saving the country from all kind of external threats. So now for them, these people, the Khalistanis, are an external threat for their integrity and the sovereignty of this country. So that's how they see this. And who are forcing them to see this way? It's none other than these Khalistanis themselves. And they are not just putting in danger their own life, but also the fellow Sikhs living here. And that's how it goes on. And
so
that's the reason why.
have they been
Yeah.
engaging in acts of terrorism within India?
Uh, right now, there are some suspected cases where some of their a musician was killed recently, and some other people who are done. And in the past, they have killed one of our prime minister
Like
in this same
how
way.
long ago? Like
Um,
decades
it
ago
was
or
decades ago. Yeah, decades ago. It's
yeah,
not
okay.
any time near. Yeah. So
So
that's how it goes on.
so during the 47 partition, was there talk then of making a Sikh homeland as well, or it was just the Hindu Muslim
They were having
separately?
such a call, but that was kept
Okay,
aside because we were already dealing with India and Pakistan and other
right.
Kashmir and other
You
ways. You,
you told me a few weeks ago, and I can't recall
mm.
what's the demographics of India, like Sikh wise? Like, the percentage of Sikhs is actually
The
quite
exact
small, is it not?
percentage, yeah, yeah. If we go with that, maybe less than 5%. I think. I think
Yeah.
we can have a separate session over this, what these Khalistanis are doing, and we can just uh, get some pictures and some news and complete details. I think that will be better because we are now impromptu doing this, so it's better that we do it in that way.
Okay.
How do you think?
So let me quote from this BBC article.
Mm.
It says Canadian police accused Indian agents of involvement in quote homicides, extortion, and violent acts end quote, targeting supporters of the pro-Khalistan movement. Now, both Canadian intelligence and the American intelligence agencies have investigated this and have found links that it was the Indian government that was involved in the assassination of this pro-Khalistan person in Canada. Are you? Do you think this is something your government would have done, or do you think this is propaganda?
As you mentioned about how this Mossad carries out things,
Yeah,
I would say, yeah, the Indian intelligence is no much lesser than them. Okay, so they are capable of doing this, but I don't have any evidence of doing this, and I think Indian government is constantly asking for the evidence of how India did this and
yeah.
other things. So
Well,
yeah,
I know there's been the big diplomatic row, like they've
mm,
expelled diplomats. Like there's been mutual uh, expulsions of diplomats. I believe India is not even
mm.
processing visas to Canada right now, something like that. So
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah, so I guess I couldn't have come to Litmus. I couldn't have gotten a visa.
yes, okay. So next time you can plan it now itself because it's already fixed for the month of October, so you can plan that way.
We need things to calm down diplomatically so I can get a visa to India.
Absolutely. You have 1 year
Yeah,
ahead. You
yeah,
can plan pretty well.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, somebody's
Okay.
just posted
Yes,
1.7% of Sikhs in
1.7.
India, around 20
Yeah,
million. Okay. I know, like,
2000.
you know, growing up in Canada, I mean, I saw lots of Sikhs, like with the is it turban? Is that how
That's
they
a
call it, a
that's a
turban or
bias because you
yeah,
you are it is easy for you to identify a Sikh. So wherever you look around, you will find a Sikh and you will think that,
yeah,
oh, there are a lot of them. That's a problem.
yeah.
It's a bias.
No,
What
but I
do you
mean,
say? Sampling bias. Yeah.
I did notice that Canada, and I believe Canada does have a pretty substantial Sikh
Yeah.
population. I mean, I mean, we have populations from like my best friend in high school,
Mm.
came from Pakistani immigrants, and one of my best friend in kindergarten, grade one, was an Indian immigrant that I grew up with. He lived in the house behind mine. We were in the same grade. We were always hanging out
Mm.
together. So I
Yeah.
can't remember if he was Sikh. Singh is a
Sing. Yeah.
Sikh name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that was
their
his surname.
surname. Yeah.
So he would have been a Sikh then. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. I think we should do this. We should elaborate on this, like the Khalistani movement and how it is. It's not just causing trouble to the Sikh people, it's even giving a wrong sense of the whole country, India. So we should clear that out because we should clearly say they are not the real people who are who does things in a peaceful manner. They are not for peace. That's the real problem that they are causing because we have one Operation Blue Star that happened in 1984. That's the event that happened. I was searching on. So it's an operation to save some of the refugees that they were taking in and sorry, the hostages that they were taking in and all such events. It caused much casualties and these kind of terrorist activities. This is what they are engaging in, and they can do it in any country. But now it's mostly between India and Canada, so that's the reason why we see a lot of exchanges happening over there.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully the governments can work things out. So,
yeah,
but I mean, yeah,
definitely.
if the Indian government did assassinate somebody on Canadian soil, well, that's a major violation of territorial sovereignty. So that is not something that's going to get smoothed over easily. But Canada's fighting with China right now too over the comments we've made about the hostage diplomacy with the
Hmm.
Canadians the Chinese took hostage. So. Yeah,
Great.
I think it's gonna take a little time for this to settle down because the Indian government's denying it. So, but you seem to
Hmm.
think that they would. So,
Yeah.
anyway, okay,
Yep.
all right,
So
that wraps it up for this week. So, I hope you guys
yes.
enjoyed our chat.
What's
It,
what's the episode now today? Number. We
I
have done a lot.
believe I think this is episode 18. I'd have to look at
Okay.
the what do you
So
call
we
it?
are doing it
The
pretty well,
thumbnail
I think.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks
Okay.
everybody. I hope you're enjoying it. Let us know. I mean, we've had some comments from people about wanting to see more debates, which is what we did tonight. So please let us know
Great.
what you like, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah. Bye bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.